to strap in and get ready.
The leaders in AFL SuperCoach are incoming, helping you win your leagues and climb up the rankings.
You're now listening to the Insight AFL Show with your hosts, Big Horse and Skiddy.
Hello and welcome to the Inside AFL Show. I'm your host, The Horse, and we're back. We're back. It's round 0, ladies and gentlemen. Some people hate it, but for me, I love it because you know what? It's footy. Footy's back. And I know some games have been called off, but we're still going to talk about a couple of games tonight. Our GameDay Squad League, that's going to go ahead. But I've got two very experienced super coaches and one who's had his nose to the ground when we're talking all things Sydney team. So to start us off, our man from the WhatsApp group, Golden Tonsils, has joined us. Phil, how are you?
G'day, Horse. G'day, Hurls. Lovely to be here. Round 0, the time when the Golden Tonsils gets a gig on the Insight Fantasy Sports Podcast Network. What's not to love about that?
Yeah, well, have you, before I introduce Hurls, last year was we'll say, devastating time, the 2024 Grand Final. Sydney looked good until the grand final came around. Have you recovered or are you still in mourning?
I'm still in therapy. I'm not sure about mourning, but still in therapy. Yeah, it's not cheap, let me tell you.
Yeah, I bet. Wearing a shirt like that with Dane Rampy on the front, it looks like you're still going through therapy, mate. But anyway, we'll get to that later. My man on the end, Hurls, he's here to provide us expert analysis on all things SuperCoach. How are you, mate?
I'm very good. I had to ask Phil who the player was. I didn't recognise Dane Rampy without a post in the image, so he wasn't climbing up a post. So, but anyway, yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm looking forward to getting into the 2 games now instead of 4. It's a little bit disappointing, but I guess we should start off with a bit of a shout out to anyone who's got family or friends in the area where the cyclones are hitting and all that kind of stuff. It can't be nice being in that unknown of what's coming. So hopefully everyone stays safe. Took
the words out of my mouth, mate. Sorry. When we're talking about livelihoods, properties, you name it, like it's going to affect a lot of people. So first and foremost, I think the AFL have made the right choice by calling this off in the affected areas where it is going to hit the hardest. Yeah, from a SuperCoach point of view, it does throw a few things into disarray. But you look at the bigger picture. This is fantasy sports. We'll manage. The families and those that are affected by this won't if they aren't afforded the chance to prepare properly. So I think the AFL have done what's right and allowed us to still have a couple of games this round, moved around a couple of fixtures in order for these games to be played at a later date. And as we'll discuss later, it's opened up some new pod possibilities with our SuperCoach teams, Hurls.
It certainly has. There's a whole heap of talk in the chat groups, like what are they doing to the Essendon Gold Coast game? Does that mean now that, we've got Brisbane and Geelong blokes who have got no bye in round 3? How good will that be to be able to select them without the early bye? So there's a whole heap of different things we can now muck around with in our teams until we get the official word from the AFL.
100%. Now, we don't normally answer questions till the end, but there are 2 that I need to bring up nice and quick because you're a wanted man so far, Phil. Golden Tonsils, are you going to be in Melbourne with the lads last game of the year?
I think we can lock that one in.
Beautiful.
100%.
And second, the first lady of the Discord wants a special shout out from the man himself.
The number 1 member of both the Chad Warner and Golden Tonsils fan clubs. She's a very, very busy, very fine woman. Mrs. Bleached Earth. G'day, love.
Oh, what a man. Anyway, this could go all night. This sounds like love radio on the bloody FM show on your Wallace. But anyway, we're going to move on. If you haven't yet, hit like, subscribe, bell. Here at Insight, we call it triple banger, but also if you listen to us on audio, give us that 5-star review. Pardon me. It gets us out into the algorithm of the SuperCoach world. More people listen to us. We love a banter. We love a laugh, and hopefully you guys do too. We want to get more people involved. So that's our goal. Now, with our head-to-head leagues, ladies and gentlemen, the $25 head-to-head league, it's full. The $50 head-to-head league, it's full. The $100, it's full. There's 2 left in the $250 league until that's full. The 2 draft leagues are full. The $25 points total points league, there is still room. So if you're still wanting to be involved in some SuperCoach leagues, let us know. It's only the $250 league and the $25 total points leagues that are still available. The link will be in the description below. But also, we have the SuperCoach World Cup. Phil, you're a part of this last year, mate, where you put yourself up against the likes of Mitch, the coach of Twitch at Flinch, who won it last year, Dr. Kando, and hundreds of people that went into that competition to test each other as to who was the best SuperCoach player in the world. NRL, AFL, BBL, and NBL. How'd you go in the end?
I think I was smack bang in the middle of the table. So definitely looking for an improved year's cycle, but it is a true test of your SuperCoach mettle, the World Cup.
Oh, there's some very smart people in there. But if you think you've got what it takes, the link is in the description below. Click on that. Hit us up. $25 to enter. Mitch, the coach of Twitch at Flinch, won almost $1,000 last year, and he is now known as the inaugural SuperCoach champion of the world. So if you want to be known as such, let us know. Now, should we just get stuck into some footy?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right. The first game we've got, ladies and gentlemen, that we're going to discuss is the Sydney Swans versus the Hawthorn Footy Club. Now, teams aren't out yet, so I can't put up the share screen, but Phil has been to training runs, been in the year when we're talking all things Sydney Swans. So I thought, why not bring the man on so we can discuss the backs, the mids, the forwards, and see where we're going to get value this year out of the Sydney Swans and see who we can keep an eye on this weekend as to whether we bring them into our sides for round 1 or whether they're a safe fade. So, Phil, do you want to take us from the top, mate? Where are we starting?
I think we'll start from in the back line. And I think the name that stands out amongst the regulars of Rampy and Melican is Sam Wicks.
Okay.
He converted small forward, spent a lot of time, for those who take in a bit of VFL action, he's actually known as more of a midfield forward at VFL level. And Dean Cox has looked at him and gone, no, I like your tackling pressure. I'm going to throw you in with the defenders and see how you go. And I don't think it's too big of a statement to say he's probably saved his career at AFL level because the Swans did a lot of drafting of small forward talent, and Wixie was definitely going to be a little bit lost in the shuffle if he stayed forward of the ball. Am I a little bit nervous that he's not being given a bit of time in the VFL to work on adjusting to being a defender? Yes, but Harry Cunningham is better part of a month away.
Okay.
And Wixie's going to be thrown into that shutdown small defender role that Harry's played for a number of seasons and played very well.
So when Cunningham becomes fit, does he take Wicks's role, or is this not a certainty?
I think the fact that with throwing Wicks straight into the on-field side and looking at the rest of the likely team, I think he may be able to stay as a regular bench piece if he acquits himself well to start the year.
Gotcha. Hurls, what are you thinking with their rotation that they've got down back? So they've had the likes of Lloyd, Roberts in the past as well. Who else? Blakey. But he looks like he's playing more of a lockdown role now, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. I think there's a few relevant pieces in the Swans back half this year. So obviously Blakey will probably not be as SuperCoach relevant. If he's going to play a little bit more accountable, then it might mean, even though he looked like he still had the kick-ins in the practice games, it still is a bit more of a lockdown kind of role he looked like he had. But there's also Patton, who's cheap, defender forward. There's Roberts, who looked pretty good in that game. There's some relevance for us to look out for in that back half for sure.
Phil, is Roberts going to be the designated kicker, so to speak? Is he going to, like last year, they started to mould him into the Jake Lloyd role. Do you see that becoming a permanent fixture now, or do you think there's still water to go under the bridge, so to speak, and it could impact his scoring?
Yeah, I think to start the year, I'd be very confident that we're going to see some really good scores out of Matty Roberts.
Okay.
My main concern earlier in the preseason was that we were getting a lot of hype around Ollie Florent. I think he's one off that halfback line that will, go to another level this season. And we're not really going to see a true picture of the impact of Callum Mills coming back into the team on Matt Roberts until Millsy gets back from his plantar fasciitis setback. I think we can start the season with Matty Roberts with a high degree of confidence.
Yeah, nice. Before we move into the midfield field, it is round 0, and we're all about giving here at the Inside Fantasy Sports Network. Did you say packs? You did. Oh,
I did.
There
say
we go,
packs.
ladies and
I did
gentlemen.
say
There is
packs.
a pack there from GameDay Squad. They're in the chat. Cut and paste it into your browser. See if you can get yourself some free cards thanks to the guys at GameDay Squad. We'll talk about them a little bit later on. We're going to move into whoever gets that code, by the way, I want you to inbox me so I can read out what you get. Phil, let's move into the midfield because one Errol Goulden last week, I know that you're still grieving with that injury, and I know it's hard and it's a tough gig, but who does this open the door for now? Do you want to go through your midlines?
Yeah, so I've got our midline starting Lloyd, who we saw transition into more of a wing presence at the latter stages of last season. He's on one wing. We've got Chad Warner in the guts, and Justin McInerney. I've got him moving from more of a half forward flank to a true wing. As somebody that, again, we saw flirt with a bit of a behind the ball role. So I think him running up and down that opposite wing makes the most sense. But as we were talking about earlier, Horse, the Swans are in an interesting situation where they have a lot of cover for a wing position. But then you balance that out with nobody plays that wing position better than Errol Goulden. At times we could see, your James Jordan, Braden Campbell, who I've also got on a half forward flank, moving through the wing. Ollie Florent, again, could also move from half back onto a wing. So there are definitely options there.
Hells, I feel like Sydney use their wingers a bit different to others because, like, for example, with Goulden, it's almost like he's a central piece and they look to get the ball in his hands a lot because he is such a good user of the ball. Whereas with other teams, wingers can be isolated from time to time, but Goulden just keeps racking it up when he's playing.
Yeah, I mean, for a start, Goulden probably is the least traditional winger in the comp, right?
Isn't he?
He starts out there, but he just goes wherever he wants to go.
He's like he's a fifth on baller, yeah.
Yeah, he runs everywhere. So it'd be interesting now that he's not there, how they set up. McInerney's an interesting one that piqued my interest a bit there, Phil, because he had a lot of CBAs last week in that practice game against Gold Coast. And so we're all sort of trying to figure out, does Sheldrick get more CBA time? And I noted that Cox was talking about him on 360 earlier in the week, saying that he'll get his shot, which is great for us as SuperCoach fans.
That's what we want to hear.
Yeah. So it's just how that mix plays out, though, with Jordan, McInerney, Sheldrick joining the stars to come back, like Heaney and Warner and those guys, would be really fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Just on Sheldrick as a SuperCoach asset too. Like, I feel like I've been pretty consistently talking him up all off season. So I'm not saying that he owes me personally to deliver on that hype, but he doesn't not owe me anything for being the captain of this hype train. Is also what I'm saying. I think we'll definitely see him as somebody who was touted last season as being the guy that internally the Swans really expected to go to another level and cement a spot in the best team.
Okay.
I think injuries pushed that back 12 months, and that he's the guy. If Matty Roberts was the Golden Tonsils top tip in 2024, Angus Sheldrick is that for 2025.
Big call. We've got some really good comments in the chat that we'll bring up later, Phil, but through your midfield, mate, Dean Cox was one of the premier ruckmen in the competition once upon a time, especially for SuperCoach. Now, he's got Brodie Grundy, who's looking likely, or more likely than not, to play this week. And when you've got a midfield like Goulden, well, Mills isn't going to be there to start. Goulden's not going to be there either, but Rowbottom, Warner, these sorts of players going through there. How do you see that midfield rotation going?
Look, it's going to be tricky navigating these first few rounds because we're going to see a lot of Chad Warner. We're going to see a really healthy dose of Angus Sheldrick. We're going to see a lot of just James Rowbottom tackling people into dust. Isaac Heaney for me is the interesting one. So we saw him start the season like an absolute house on fire. He was the Brownlow leader after half a dozen rounds, probably further into the season. I think he's the one that teams start to really put a lot more work into, and that will potentially open things up for Chad Warner, who's the more established member of that midfield. You think about Heaney only just becoming a full-time midfielder last year.
That's right.
But I think he's the one that if I was going to have a punt on who jumps out to a best and fairest early lead, I think it'll be Chad Warner.
Be cool. I like it. Do you see Sheldrick being part of the starting midfield mix, or is he going to be more of your 40% CBA's rotational type of player?
My feeling, and the bits and pieces that I've sort of spoken to people that are close to the club, is that they want Angus to come on mid stages of the first quarter, run himself into the ground for a quarter and a half, and then come off, and we'll see how the second half plays out. So I think he's close to first man off the bench within that mid rotation, possibly for James Rowbottom, because there's some similarities in the game that those two have. But again, it's going to be an interesting watch, because I think as soon as you add Mills in particular back into that mix, things will rebalance quite significantly.
They just diversify themselves, don't they, when you get people like Mills and Goulden back. IJ's just saying, has this turned into a Sydney Swans podcast? Love it. You're fucking dreaming, mate. Anyway, let's move in. Or have you got anything you'd like to add on the Swans midfield there, Hurls?
I think that was well summed up. I think there's a lot to play out. And from a SuperCoach point of view, I think, and I've been having a lot of banter with a few people about Sheldrick, saying I'm not as hot on him as others. Having said that, I've still got him in my team. I agree with what Phil's saying there. I think it's a short-term safe play, and then I'd love to see what happens when Mills and that is back. I hope that he gets to stay in the rotation even after that, because Goulden might be a bit longer, because he'll make us the 150 to 200 we want, and then he's done his job.
I think the only other thing that I'll add about Sheldrick is the thing to keep in mind with him. He is a pure mid. He's not someone that, I put it this way, if you see him in an official team list named forward of the ball, he's not playing forward of the ball.
No.
So for him, it's either right in the guts or on the bench to come on and be in the guts, which is different from a Chad Warner, who's proven to be a real asset as a dangerous forward. So
for sure.
From a SuperCoach perspective, you'll know that he's going to be in and around the ball 100% of the time that he's on field. It's just going to be a matter of how much time on ground he's given.
Yeah. I suppose from a footy point of view, or from a SuperCoach point of view, that's a good thing, because some people are often a victim of their own abilities in being able to play multiple roles. With Sheldrick, he's a midfielder. He's an inside midfielder, and that's it. So if he's playing, you know what he's going to be playing. You know what he's going to be doing. So that's something to look out for, ladies and gentlemen. Let's move on to your forward line, mate, because I see this as probably one of your more interesting parts in the Sydney Swans, with Logan McDonald having been trialled as a back during the preseason before he hurt himself. And they've got a young McCartan playing up forward during the preseason.
Yeah, so this was probably one of the more interesting early moves that Cox flagged as being, I'm going to try this. And that was throwing Tommy McCartan, who has been a real mainstay in the last few years at fullback, and was like, no, we're going to make him a key forward. He was drafted to the Swans as a key forward, for those who remember that far back. And while he had a bit of a rough go of it in the first practice match against the Giants, he actually performed really well against the Suns. And I think a key part of that is he doesn't run under the ball. His sense of where to be is really, really good.
Okay.
I think that'll be something that will persist with for large parts of the season. And it'll be game script which determines whether he gets thrown back at any point. But I think for all intents and purposes, Tom McCartan is now a key pillar of that forward line.
What happens with the small forwards? So you've got your Papleys, your Haywoods.
Yep.
Who else?
Well, I've got Braden Campbell starting on a half forward flank.
Yep.
I don't think he's ever been considered a small forward, but he's not the biggest fella, so he'd probably qualify as a small-ish forward now. But he can play a number of roles. James Jordan's going to be our defensive forward. He played that role exceptionally last season. So I don't think that changes. I think possibly the good luck story of the preseason with all the injuries that we've seen already is Joel Amati, who I had as being just on the periphery of the best side. You can almost lock him in to start as deepest forward.
Okay.
Next to Papley and Hayward, who you mentioned, and when they're fit, they will pick themselves.
Yeah, right. Hurls, you got anything to add on that forward line?
I think it's a good call with Campbell. I've loved his preseason. It wasn't someone that I'd really paid a lot of attention to, except we know he's got a booming kick, but he's kicked a few goals, so that's good. The interesting one for me in there is not from a SuperCoach point of view that we'll pick, but who he's going to go to, and that is Jordan. Like, Jordan will clamp somebody. So I'm really interested who's that going to be. Is it going to be a Will Day? Is it going to be someone like a Moore in their forward half rather than the midfielder? Or is it going to be a combination of whoever's hot? That'll be the interesting thing to watch from that perspective.
There's a bit of chat, Phil, about Tom Hanley in the chat.
Yeah, I really liked what I saw out of Tom Hanley in the game against the Suns. I think, though, he's going to be given time to develop. I think Jesse Detoli, who's another one of our new draftees,
he looks good.
He's come in with all the hype in the world. Unfortunately, he's had a bit of an injury interrupted start, but it won't take much for him to be really pushing, like, as soon as he's fit to be selected. Kinnear Beatson was incredibly happy that we landed him. So that's usually a sign that he's not going to be left in the VFL for longer than he needs to be.
What's going to happen with Corey Warner? So we've had some discussions off air about what his potential role is going to look like, and he is cheap. He's at 150K in our forward lines, but is he like your golden sub? Like, he's got an ability to change a game or to be an impact player, or is there a role across half forward or maybe even a wing there now for him?
Yeah, I think it was the perfect term for him was mentioned earlier, of being a victim of his own versatility. Corey Warner is like, he's one that I think we will see play a lot of regular senior footy this year. He's had an incredibly good off season. He's done everything he could have done in the practice matches. He's looked fantastic, but he can play a bit of midfield. He's a very dangerous forward. He can actually play a small defender role when he needs to. And I think that puts him in that position of being the ideal sub, which absolutely stinks for SuperCoach. But I think he will probably get more of a crack in the first couple of rounds because we've got a few people to come back from injury. In a full strength side, I think he's almost the perfect sub for us.
Let's be honest, Phil. They just signed him so that they can keep his brother, didn't they? The guy's just a decoy.
Is that the plan?
And it might work, Hurls. I've spoken to Horse a lot since Christmas, and I have not heard anything from the people that I know close to the club that has changed. There is a lot of very, very sneaky confidence that Chad's next contract will be signed to stay at Sydney.
Is it like the sneaky confidence of Essendon going to win a finals game, or is it like a genuine sneaky confidence?
I've not known a lot of confidence to come out of the Swans that hasn't been really genuine. That's all
Okay.
I'll say.
Okay. You heard it here first. Hurls, let's talk about the Hawks, mate.
Let's do it. So Hawthorn, it was trying to put their best team together today and have a look at what they might line up like. It seemed to be pretty obvious, which was an interesting exercise. So I've got the back line being Sicily, Barras, Scrimshaw, Amon, Battle, and then Weddle was the question mark for me. I got Impey on the bench. So that's probably their back seven for me. From a SuperCoach point of view, I think Sicily's the one, right? We don't know if he's going to have that role and just be the distributor if he doesn't move. I think they will inevitably in game move him forward occasionally. But if we could trust that he was going to be 80% of the time as that distributor off half back and he gets back to what he could do, he'd be a great SuperCoach pick at a bit of a discount because of the last couple of years where he played a bit taller.
Yep. Has it gone unspoken? And my man, Jimmy Mancuso in the chat, how are you, brother? He's brought it up. It's been a little bit underrated, the Barras pickup, hasn't it? Because now it's going to allow Sicily to play that role again.
Yeah, great pick. He's a great not only a great defender who can stop a man, but intercept marker. So he's going to be exactly what they need. Unfortunately, as much as it hates me to say that and to talk about Hawthorn in a positive light, but I will for 5 seconds. Him in Battle is exactly the recruiting you would want to see. If I was a Hawthorn fan, I would have been ecstatic with their off-season.
Probably one of the nicest things anyone said to me. 3 degenerates in one shot. There we go. Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else in the Hawthorn backline that tickles your fancy apart from Sicily?
Not from a SuperCoach point of view, really. If you're playing drafts, you could consider maybe Battle. He looked to get up the ground a lot more than I was expecting in the preseason. So he was being a runner and stuff as well. But yeah, not a classic pick.
Yep. I see there's a couple of comments here. I'm going to knock them on the head now, and feel free to let me know, boys, whether you agree or disagree. But when we're talking Short and Sicily, do you pay up $80 and take Sick Dog? Let me put it this way. Jaden Short has never averaged 100. James Sicily, however, has been one of the top scoring defenders in years gone by, and now he's got some capable defenders that can cover for him to allow him to play that intercepting role. So I personally pick Sicily.
It's a fascinating question, though, and I'll come back and I'll answer the question with a question. What do you want the player to do? Like if you're picking someone that you want to be a premium in your team, the answer is Sicily. Short is not going to be a keeper. He will be a cash cow or a stepping stone. If you want a stepping stone, then I'd probably go Short because I think he'll make more cash. But the answer to that question for me is, what do you want the player to do? And if you want him to make your money and be a stepping stone, go the cheaper one, because I think they'll average somewhere in the maybe 10-point range between each other, Mark. But if you want someone to be a keeper, don't pick Jaden Short, for goodness sake.
Yeah,
Phil,
just to build on what Earl said there. The way I think about it is, if Jaden Short, for whatever reason, wasn't taking kick-ins, would you still consider him? And I think most people would answer that with a no.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's Sicily all day.
Yep. Fair point. I like that. Let's move through to your midfield. We see Jasper there asking about Amon. He's your rotational piece off the bench into that defence, isn't he?
No, I had Amon at half-back, Impey off the bench. So he was part of the 7 though.
Gotcha.
Midfield, I've got the 2 wingers pick themselves. So D'Ambrosio and
Massimo D'Ambrosio.
That's the one. I think that those 2 pick themselves on the wing, and then the other mids, I've got Warple, Newcomb, Day, and Nash in any combination of interchange, centre, ruck, rover kind of thing. So that's probably their midfield.
Does the forward rotation of Day worry you?
The forward rotation doesn't bother me so much. I think what worried me was in the last practice game, it really looked like there were long periods of time where he didn't score. And if you take that into the real season where maybe he'll cop a tag from time to time, if that was to happen in season, it could cap his potential. I love watching him. I think he's a good pick, but I think more people at that price range have popped up that have turned me off Day a little bit.
I agree. Phil, do you want to add to that, mate?
No, nothing to add there. I think Hurls has nailed that.
It's a pretty of a tricky midfield mix, isn't it? Because Hawthorn are known for one popping off at any one time, but they're also known for no more than one popping off at any one time.
Yeah.
So if Newcomb goes off, the others don't. If Warple goes off, the others don't. If Day goes off, the others don't. So it makes it really tricky to pick a Hawthorn midfielder, doesn't it?
That's the risk. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Like if you look back through last year, if you just go to the end of the year, you're going to say Newcomb's a great pick, but Day wasn't in the side. If you go back to when Day was on fire, Newcomb started slow. So now that might change this year, but if we're going on historical data, there haven't really been premium scorers together. So that's got to be a bit of a concern.
That's right. How do you see Lloyd Meek and his season?
I think Lloyd's a safe pick. People are hotter on him than me. I think he's just a safe pick. I don't think he has the ceiling of some of the big dogs. So for me, I go elsewhere like a Max Gawn or a Sherry or a Nank, who I think have a better chance of scoring the 140s. Whereas Meek, I think, is going to be that less of a gap and variance between the floor and the ceiling, but maybe somewhere between 95 and 110.
Yeah, Hurls, I'm actually going to throw one of your questions as my sort of attitude to this question as well, is what do you need the player to do?
Yeah.
So to me, Lloyd Meek, if you've got your high ceiling, higher volatility players in other areas, and you need a 95 to 100 every week from one of your starting rucks, there's absolutely nothing wrong with picking Lloyd Meek. My only criticism would be that maybe he's a bit of a boring pick by the same token.
It's okay to have pod picks, but it's also okay to have boring picks as well.
Yeah, I think 100%. It's a good question. I'm not trying to. Don't misconstrue. I'm not trying to turn anyone off him. If you like Lloyd Meek, pick him. He's a safe ruckman. I know that some people are really targeting. He's got a great run after his bye. I think round 5 through to round whatever 12. It is, 9 or 10. I think he's got a great run. So if you're that kind of player where you're going to really target a fixture, then go for it. He's a good pick. But it's just it depends what you want.
For sure. Let's move into our forward lines, mate. We've got one of the more expensive forwards in SuperCoach, Dylan Moore, down there. Yeah, but he's also surrounded by some old heads and some real young guys.
Yeah, and probably Moore's one of the more unique forwards in that he doesn't have many CBAs and still scores premium type points. So I won't start Moore, but I think he's definitely a candidate for top 6 forward by the end of the year, and we'll probably all jump on him at some stage. And I think the forward line is really interesting at Hawthorn because it's probably been the catalyst for them turning from an ordinary team just this time last year to the excitement machine that they were at the end of the year. You got Ginnivan, you got Watson, you got McInnes, you've got sorry, not McInnes goes in there sometimes, but you got McDonald. That was the name I was looking for. They're all so dangerous. And then you got the two old heads in Gunston and Bruce, who comes off the bench and kicks his couple as sub every week. I think that's a bloody dangerous forward line.
It is. Marby or Chol probably needs to fire a bit, doesn't he, this year for Hawks, the difference between Hawks being 8th and the Hawks being 4th.
Yeah, I don't think he's that player though, is he?
Yeah. I mean, you can't rely on Gunston and Bruce to get you through to a top 4 finish though, they've had wonderful careers and they were great footballers in their time. But when they both were used sparingly as a sub, well, not even last year, the year before as well with Gunston at Brisbane, you've got to have your focus elsewhere, and they're your complementary players now. They're the leadership. They're the ones that might only get 8 or 10 touches a game but end up with 2 goals and a couple of goal assists. So
Yeah.
I think Mabiuchol's got to have a good year. Whether it's taking big grabs and kicking for a game, or whether it's just bringing the ball to ground to allow Watson and Ginnivan and those likes to just get to work.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. I think that the hard part with that spot as well, I think they would obviously prefer Lewis, right? But he's always injured, so he's not back anytime soon. But the thing that that Chol does for them is it's the second ruck. So if it was Lewis, can you play both? And then who plays second ruck? It's a conundrum if it goes that way. So I think they'll probably take Chol being a competitor, kicking a goal a week, and just giving Meek a chop out.
Yeah. You see anything else going on there, Phil?
Not particularly, but I think the Dylan Moore call's an interesting one. I think what scared me away from Dylan Moore more than anything else is how good Nick Watson looked and how there's going to be a little bit of this kid's a bit special. We've got to keep feeding him, and that might take away from Dylan Moore's ceiling. But it may just be more of a commentary around how good do you think that Hawks midfield is, and how much supply do you think is going to get into that forward line?
Dylan Moore's role as that link between halfback and full forward is really underrated. And so I'm an Essendon supporter, so Hawthorn's one of my least liked sides. But when you can appreciate a player that plays their role really well, he gets up the ground, he helps out in defence, but he also runs hard forward of centre as well in order to create that tackle pressure and that sort of thing. So when we're talking about Dylan Moore, I actually like him as a footballer because he does the little things well. It's not always flashy. Yes, he does kick goals. And Jonas has put a really good stat here in the chat. He's the free kick king. In his career, he's had 158 free kicks for, only 47 against. Last year, he had 48 free kicks for and only 13 against.
I didn't know that. That's a great stat.
Jonas doesn't normally miss, but normally it's funny. But that's kind of serious out of you, Jonas. You must be crook. Anyway, how do you see the Hawks bench coming through, mate? Who's going to be unlucky to miss out?
So I had Impey as the seventh defender on the bench. I had Nash as the rotating mid. And then I had McGuinness and a toss-up for the last spot between McKenzie and Hardwick. But Hardwick maybe is in their leadership group, isn't he? So he might get that last spot. And he can probably play either end. So he might be that versatile bloke that they'll go with instead of McKenzie. But McKenzie could be a really good player if he gets to a club where he gets some midfield time, but he doesn't seem to be in the main mix for Hawthorn.
He seems to be like that, I guess, 22nd through to 27th player bracket, doesn't he? And probably needs injuries to get a really good run.
Yeah,
might be Tassie bound.
Ooh, never know.
Yeah,
never know.
I did note that there was a quote that came out of the Hawks a few weeks back comparing Cam McKenzie to Sam Mitchell, and I couldn't help but wonder if that was to maybe try and boost what they could get for him in a trade.
Yeah,
right.
He certainly doesn't have the ability that Sam Mitchell had. He looks a little bit like him in appearance, but that's about
it. He does, yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a giveaway for you. So in round 2, we have got 2 tickets for you, if you wish to take us up on this, to come to the MCG and sit in the members with myself and the Maverick, the NFL Maverick, and watch Essendon Adelaide in the comfort of the members area. All you need to do is follow IFS Maverick, Mullen_FF, and DFEB_FFL on Twitter. Sign up free to our Patreon. It's not going to cost you a cent. And you go into the draw to win a drinks package and also 2 free tickets in the MCC to watch Adelaide and Essendon in round 2. So take a screenshot, do what you need to do. Let us know when you sign up. You'll go into the draw. The winner will be drawn in at the conclusion of round 1. Nice little package, isn't it? Thanks to the guys at the NFL show.
More free stuff.
More free stuff. That's unreal, isn't it? But also, speaking of free stuff, GameDay Squad. If you're not involved yet, GameDay Squad offer a virtual card app where you can purchase cards, or if you're with us, you get them for free. When you sign up, use the code IFSAUS and you get a 3 9-player common pack, thanks to the guys at GameDay Squad. But that's not all. You get to make your squad in the Classic League. If you win that league, which costs nothing to join, you get a $50 pack, Thanks to the guys at GameDay Squad. Every Monday, that's the league code. I'll leave it there. Sorry, Phil. We're just going to keep this up for a little bit. Every Monday, you get free packs if you use the code IFSAUS as well, just for being a part of our Patreon. And also, if you are in our Patreon, you get 3 free packs as well, valued at $30. So effectively, you're getting $80 to $90 worth of value for free just by signing up into the Patreon, using the code IFSAUS, and jumping in our leagues. Hurls, you've ripped open a few packs, mate. Pulled in a good card?
To be honest, I've got a really great spread of cards that aren't the platinum and the diamond, but I have a hell of a lot of cards for the league. So I'm looking forward to going well in the league this year. I'm one player short for opening round. I can't field a forward. Everyone else, even in the 2 games, I've still got a team, except for I've got one forward missing. So I've got some good variety, put it that way, for the league this year.
You're not in yet, are you, Phil?
Tell you what, a little bit of breaking news, Horse. And this goes out to our boys, Deadly and Kizza, who I'm sure are in the chat. I can't see the chat right now, but I'm sure they're in there. The Golden Tonsils will be ripping open his first pack on Friday this week.
Oh, what a man. We love that. And you know what we're going to do to celebrate? We're going to give away some free packs. So in the chat, ladies and gentlemen, cut and paste the code. Thanks to Golden Tonsils, there's a free pack for you to punch into your GameDay Squad app, and hopefully you'll rip open some good cards. Now, before we get stuck into Collingwood and Sydney, we've got an American guy who loves talking about our Patreon.
Want to take your SuperCoach game to the next level? Inside Fantasy Sports are bringing you exclusive content all year round, such as weekly expert Q&As, team, trade, and captaincy advice, statistical deep dives, priority podcast questions, and tons more. So what are you waiting for? Get full access to the experts. Go to patreon.com/Insight Fantasy Sports and subscribe to Insight Unlimited today.
And I'd love to talk about that Patreon just for a sec, Hurls, because you've personally written up some really, really nice articles that have featured in other podcasts actually throughout Australia this year, most notably the buy planner and how to work your way around that. But also talk to us about the last article that you released that, like, it blew my mind.
Yeah, it's about this time of year that everyone starts getting a bit carried away with practice matches. You see someone score. You know, I've just pulled up the GWS game, for example, and we've got Lockie Ash has got 125. Oh, how can I get him in my team? And you just got to calm down a bit. So what I thought was, what could I write for the guys out there who might sort of get a bit carried away, not just now in their starting squad and get envy of the players they don't have, but also as trades come in, and we all get sucked into break evens, we get sucked into losing a bit of cash on one of our mid prices, and we say, oh, we've got to trade them out now because they're going to drop 20 grand this week. So I thought it'd be a good idea to just write a bit of a strategic kind of article where everyone can go and have a look at, well, what's it going to take to go from roughly 11 keepers, which is, I think, roughly where we'll all start. We'll start with about 11 keepers in our team. And then how do you get to that 23 that you want by about the end of the buys? And so what does that cost in trades? How do you plan for it? What's the purpose? And we've spoken about this a few times tonight. What's the purpose of everyone in your team? Are they a keeper? Are they a stepping stone? Or are they a cash generator? And then make sure you don't lose sight of what their role is so that you can get to those 23 or 24 primos by the end of the year.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to read that article, it'll cost you a cup of coffee per month. And it's not just that article. There is plenty more in there for you inside the Patreon. The link is in the description below. Let's get into this next game because this is what people want to listen to, more footy. So, Phil, we're going to talk about is it the better Sydney side?
It most certainly is not, but they try, and that's really what matters at the end of the day, isn't it, Horse?
Yeah, you're right. GWS versus the Collingwood Football Club. Talk to me. How are GWS going to line up down back this week?
Well, look, The first thing I want to do is shout out the fact that the Giants have 5 people suspended to start the season, which is not something I've ever seen before. And the lesson there, kids, is plan your Mad Monday costumes a little bit better. I've got the full back line for the Giants being Harry Himmelberg, Sam Taylor, and Connor Iden. I think that is going to be fairly set and forget throughout the year. And the same with the half-back line of Whitfield, Buckley, and Lockie Ash.
Do you think Whitfield's just going to pick up where he left off last year and be the man? They just look to get the ball in his hands all the time. They just look to all their forward movement through Lockie Whitfield, down back through Lockie Whitfield, kickouts through Lockie Whitfield. Do you see that happening again?
As I glance at my team and see Lockie Whitfield as my D2, I will answer that with, gee, I hope so. Look, he certainly seems to have been doing exactly that through the preseason. I think at this point of his career, and the fact that he really has found a home as an established elite ball user off that half-back line, I can't see that changing in the way that the GWS play their footy.
Do you know who else thinks that? Ryan from Astute Newstead. Use the promo code INSIGHT if you want any help with home loans, borrowing a bit of money, or remortgaging your home loan. He does it free of charge. So again, link is in the description below. Is there anyone else in the GWS back six that we can look at for Supercoach reasons, or do you think it's Lockie Whitfield, and Winnie Blues?
I think it does start and stop with Lockie Whitfield. I do, though, want to piggyback off something else that Hurls said earlier. You used Lockie Ash as your example of someone to be careful of a spike score in the preseason. He did this last year as well, and I remember a conversation that I had with yourself, Horse, about listening to a split squad game for the Giants where Tom Green was on one side and Lockie Ash was on the other side, and Tom Green gave his squad an absolute bake for the fact that basically, can somebody mark this bloke? He's bringing his own footy and making us all look bad. Yeah. So, and that didn't really amount to a breakout season for Supercoach for Lockie Ash. So I think that's a great shout by Hurls. To be really careful, particularly with him, because we've seen it before, and he is second banana to Lockie Whitfield in that back line.
Anything else, Hurls?
One other name to mention, and Deadly's reminded us in chat, Connor Stone. He played the preseason game there last week and across halfback. I don't know if he's going to be in their best 18. I think he might start in their best 22, given the Mad Monday shenanigans and stuff like that. And he's someone we all desperately want to be best 18, really, because
we kind of need him to.
Cheap forward. So we really need him to play, but I don't really trust him. But he's someone that might end up in all of our teams just because he's there.
Out of necessity.
You're shaking your head, Phil. Do you think he's going to miss the cut, or?
I actually think you're right. I think he plays to start the year. I've got him on the bench in my expected side. I've seen him named in a couple of on-field predicted teams. I just don't. He screams trap to me, guys, and I've gone to fair pains to try to warn people off him. I don't think his ball use is good enough. I don't think there's a clearly defined role for him. I just think he's someone who's going to plod along making aggravating scores, and it'll be a really slow burn as a cash cow. He's not in my team. I've got no plans to put him in my team.
Okay. Interesting. Talk to me about the mid-mix. We'll start with the wings and into the middle, mate.
Yeah, so for those of you in the Patreon who may have read some of my work in the preseason, I'm very bullish on Finn Callahan. And I think the absences to start the year, particularly with Tom Green coming back from injury, it's just everything is pointing toward him being. This is where he ascends to not being the main man in the midfield. That will be Tom Green, but I'm very confident in saying that by the end of this season, Finn Callaghan is the clear number 2 at GWS, ahead of the aging Stephen Coniglio, and probably more controversially, he's going to be ahead of Kelly. I think we've seen the best of him, and this is Finn Callaghan's time to shine.
That's hot.
It's very hot.
Like
I can see it happening. He's got breakout written all over him.
Absolutely, and I think if you think about, and we talk about, often in SuperCoach we talk about our M1 and our M8 and all that kind of stuff. I think if you're talking about breakout candidates, sometimes we get trapped by a team's M3 or a team's M4, and they're always going to be capped a little bit because they've got the M1 and M2 ahead of them. I think he's M2 at least, and for the first month while there's no Tom Green, he's M1 at the Giants. So I think he's got breakout written all over him.
He does.
It's hard to know how to structure your midfield up, whether you can have Oliver, Chera, him, Will Ashcroft. Like, all of that mid-range is so hard to know which ones to go with, but he's in that mix.
Yeah. Yeah, I certainly wouldn't fight you off picking him in your side. He just screams breakout, doesn't he? For me, I think there's more breakout value there than what there is with Will Day, which may sound controversial, but yeah, when you're talking about, and the way that I see this is, I like my midfielders either being the number 1 or the number 2. So at Hawthorn with Will Day, he's got Warple, he's got Newcomb, he's got others that run through there as well. Connor Nash, he's not SuperCoach relevant, but plays a lot of midfield minutes. But then we go to GWS, and there's Tom Green, who's the clear number 1. And then you're right, Kelly, he's been known to play on a wing in his later years as well. Stephen Coniglio's aging. He'll probably play a bit of forward this year as well. Who's their clear number 2? If they play Toby Bedford in a tagging role through there, it's almost got to be Finn Callaghan, doesn't it? And then that's where your minutes are going to come from, your CBA percentages, and therefore spike scores are going to happen. And that floor is going to be a lot lower than what it's been previously.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for most out of this game is, what does the CBA look like for Callaghan, for Kelly? Does Coniglio get any time? He got no time at all in the Pracky game last week. But do they, in a real game, do they start putting him in there? If it still looks like Callaghan is going to be M1 for now and M2 when Green comes back, he's a great pick.
Yep, I like it. Anyone else through there you want to talk about, or out on the wings, Phil?
Well, I think you bang on as far as Toby Bedford's concerned. He is their midfield tagger. I think he'll be named on a wing, but will go where he needs to go.
Well, let's call out the elephant in the room right now. Then, how long until he goes to Dacos in this game? Is it immediate?
7.4 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah, first bounce.
Straight
he
to
will.
him.
He will attempt to live in his back pocket.
I don't think it'll matter, mind you, but he'll go to him.
No, I don't think so either.
It's probably the difference between Dacos going 120 to 160 for me.
Yeah.
Good and Deadly's in the chat. He's done a really good tagger planner as well, which is also inside the Patreon where you'll find plenty of other things. Phil, the ruck situation at GWS. So I find this interesting. They've still got Big Briggsy, who, he's the hands down number 1 choice. He'll start there this year. But Nick Madden is really coming on there. He's going to be fighting for a spot mid to back end of the year here.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think his days of being a really reliable loop nuffy will be ending very soon. But yeah, I don't think that Madden will break in unless something really unexpected happens. I think we'll get through round 10 without seeing him, and it's probably through that middle of the season. If they're needing to change things up a bit at GWS, we might see him. If they're going really well, then it might be sort of more toward the back end as you start to give players a bit of a breather. But he will play a good few games of senior footy, I think.
He had a 207-point SuperCoach game in the last game of the VFL last year. So he is learning how to use his body. His ruck craft is getting a lot better, and he's finding the ball around the ground too. So, again, if he takes that next step, then Briggsy might have a bit of competition on his hands. With the forward line, I want to ask you first, Hurls, because there's a lot of interest for me around this forward line. So Hogan, broken thumb, Stringer, hamstring. Thank Christ the Dons got rid of him. How are they going to structure up? So they're going to have Daniels. They're going to have Darcy Jones. They're going to have Toby Green. They're going to have Brent Daniels. It's going to be the Mosquito fleet. But Cadman's got to be the number one now.
Yeah, I think Cadman will be the man. I think, do they go with the young kid? I'll get his name wrong. Grzuski. Yeah, he played a couple of games last year. Do they go back to Riccardi? I don't know. I haven't seen him much this preseason. Has he been?
I think he's been injured.
Playing? He might be injured. So, it's certainly a bit of a watch this space for the Talls. But they love the Mosquito guys anyway. I think that's how their game is built. So they won't have any fear with playing 2 or 3 smalls and getting up and back. And that's their game. The tsunami is how they want to move the ball. So I think they'll manage. If they have to go with if they have to go with just Cadman, they will.
So Phil, when we see these big guys, Lockie Keefe's a good one. Thanks, Grant. Lockie Keefe, Grzuski, Cadman. They're all cheap on SuperCoach, but we're not picking them, are we?
No, not at all. I want to thank both of you for having a crack at Grzuski before it got to me, because to give you an idea of how confident I was that I was going to butcher that name, I've written him down as capital G, 3 question marks. Absolutely no idea. I think that given the players that are out, I think Grzuski actually starts deep forward in this game, and ends up being more of a potential second ruck option when Hogan is back.
Yep.
I've got Keefe. Keefe's a great shout out.
Okay.
I've got him as being a bench piece for round 0 or opening round.
Yeah.
For me, I think, Cadman, this is where, the opportunity he sort of can't allow to slip by.
No, his time is now. Yeah.
Yeah, he's really shown himself he's shown flashes as the clear second banana behind Hogan, and that worked really well for them last year. But I think given where Cadman was drafted and what the expectations are for him, this is the kind of opportunity that he really needs to grab with both hands.
For sure.
Yeah.
What sort of rotational pieces you got coming off the bench?
This bench was really hard to put together. But I've got Keefe with James Leake, Cody Angove, Jacob Ware, and Connor Stone. So There's a lot of, I think the common element of all of those players is they're all capable of playing multiple positions. The concern is, even though Leake is a bigger body for someone who's probably going to play primarily through the midfield, although he's defender only in SuperCoach, so the big positive for James Leake is he will get game time and he will play enough to get mid defender duel. But when you look at just from a football perspective, Keefe, Leake, Angove, Ware, and Stone, not a lot of size there outside of Keefe.
Yeah.
No, they're probably hoping that it's going to be wet and just the big guys have just got to get the ball to ground.
Which is very possible, isn't it? I think it's going to be pretty wet on the weekend. I think the interesting one in the Pracky was Leake got their only 4 clearances of the day, so maybe he does get a bit of a go early.
He had the most CBAs for GWS on the day. Yeah.
If there's no Tom, obviously there's no Tom Green, so maybe he gets an early start. But again, he might be that trap for us in SuperCoach. We pick him because he starts the first 3 weeks, and then he gets dumped, and we're in no man's land without any cash gen.
Yeah. So the first really good sign for Leake in the preseason, it's been a real roller coaster for a lot of people that have followed James Leake looking for that rookie price defender. He went from really good sign. He, in an intra club, he was given the job of marking Tom Green. Great sign, right? Put him on your number 1 mid and see what he's got. And then that first official practice match, he didn't get on the park until the 4th quarter. Bad signs. Everyone jumps off. That last Pracky match, he couldn't have looked better, which then, of course, makes things really complicated because you've got this wild spectrum of what he's done through the preseason. From what I have heard out of GWS, they really love him as a footballer, but there's not a lot of concrete, this is what we want out of him in the team. Okay. It's kind of like, we love him because we feel like he can do everything, but we don't actually know what we need from him.
Yep. Yeah. Hurls, I'll probably set you up a little bit tonight because we're talking about two clubs that Essendon supporters probably hate the most in Hawthorn and then Collingwood, but you're probably lucky that you've got your right-hand lady at home who's mad Collingwood that was able to help you out with the team.
I did see that she just joined the chat too, so she probably just tuned in just to watch to see if I butcher this Collingwood side or not. But
nothing to see here. Move on.
she did give me a little bit of a hand. So Collingwood, I think their back line is really interesting because no Houston this week. He's still got one game left of his suspension. So Quaynor, Moore, Maynard, I think that speaks for itself, the full back line. And then half back line is Josh Dacos, who they're now playing at half back. Jeremy Howe, he's been a mainstay and he's taking all their kick-ins at the moment. Yep. And on the other back flank was probably the most contentious one. It'll either be Reef McInnes or it'll be Markov. So it depends if they go for the runner or if they go for the sort of more tallish kind of guy. Given what we just said about GWS, maybe Markov would be a better move.
Yeah, probably, especially if it's wet.
Yeah.
But they've been talking up Reef McInnes during the preseason, haven't they?
They have been, yeah. And I think they're looking for that third tall defender because they don't have one. They've got sort of, Moore and Howe, but that's it. And Howe's obviously old as the hills. So they do need that third one. They've tried Charlie Dean there. He's probably out of favour a little bit for Reef McInnes at the moment. So he's probably the one that's going to get first crack at third tall. But whether that's this week, given the wet, given GWS's makeup, I don't know. We'll see.
Spot on.
And I'd assume then we're looking at whoever wins that spot out of McInnes and Markov. They just go straight out for Houston.
I think so. I think Houston in and one of those two out and the other one stays on the bench. I think when Houston comes back, now that I'm just thinking about it, when Houston comes back, given Josh Dacos has gone back there, I'd probably say Reef's a better chance than Markov. But I don't know. Have we got any comments in the chat? If you look up, what's the other half saying? Leggy will be better with the wet. Reef will come in time, but both of them will be out once Houston comes back. There you go. I've nailed it.
There you go.
That was good.
Spot on. I don't think there's really any relevance apart from maybe Josh Dacos.
Yeah, I heard a few people.
Perspective.
I heard a few people talking about Josh Dacos, and if you're play again, what do you want him for? If you want a midfielder who's going to get DPP at round 6, he's a candidate along with Ollie Hollands, along with Dylan Shield. I wouldn't personally start any of them, but if that's your rationale, I get it.
Yeah.
So we're not necessarily looking at Josh Dacos as being someone who can improve on their average by 15 to 20 points with this new role.
Look, he's got a new role, so I'm not saying he can't. Yeah. And I think Collingwood's game style suits that position. So Noble's gone, so there's a spot there. He could easily improve his thing, but for me, I want to see it in real matches for a while. I'd rather pick him up at what's he priced at now? Maybe 400 or something.
80, I think he is.
I'd rather pay 520 for him when he's averaging 100 after. Yeah. I'd rather pay 520 for him averaging 100 after 5 weeks than I would take a punt now personally.
I think people might get sucked in this week too, Hurls, because there'll be no Houston. So he might be the clear number one this week, and then Houston comes back, and then they're so-called waxing that role to running half backs. Yeah. So it could be really
who knows?
Interesting.
Yeah. And Houston's had a really interesting preseason. No kick-ins, but scoring really well. Looks to me that they want to get him the ball, but they're not using him to kick in, which maybe to me says he might get 100 to 105, but is capped from that 120 that we'd really want to start him.
Gotcha. Let's go through the midfield, mate, and your wings.
Yeah, midfield. So I think they trialled this last week, Lipinski on one wing and then either Crisp or Sidebottom on the other. Crisp was the main winger in the trial game against Richmond, but Sidebottom was last year. So I think it's one of those two with the other one of Crisp or Sidebottom on the bench. I've then got Pendlebury in the mix and obviously Nick Dacos and Perryman. So my ranking, if you like, in CBA is going to be Nick Dacos, Perryman at 2, and then you got Crisp, Sidebottom, Pendlebury at 3, 4, and 5 in any given order.
Yep, DeGoey's still a couple of weeks away. That came
DeGoey's still away, And DeGoey will jump those other guys.
Yeah, probably expect him to come back. I'm not even sure if he'll come back before the buys because they've got 3 games in the buy, so it's probably good for him to sort of target round 4 and come in fresh. Darcy Cameron in there, ex-Sydney man, Phil.
Yeah, it was a rookie out of the Swans and one that we let slip away.
Yeah, lots to talk about there, Phil. No worries. Let's move on.
I do want to say before we move away from the Pies midfield, I just want to say as more as a footballer than necessarily a SuperCoach asset, I really like watching Patrick Lipinski play football.
He's a good footballer.
He's so good to watch.
I love the new role for him. I love the new role for him. I think wing's going to suit him a lot better. I think last year he was more half forward rolling up and he went missing for long periods of the game. I think even though that can happen wing, he was pushing back really hard into defence. I think that'll suit him much better. Although I do think don't pick him as a super coach because that could be a trap. I think a few people said that in chat earlier that it's a preseason game last week. Don't trust the 120 that he got last week. That's for sure. Probably remiss not to say Darcy Cameron part of the midfield though. If you're looking for a unique ruck, he's an option. He's a great sort of intercept marking ruckman. So he'll go okay in the middle and then push back to take those intercept marks. Occasionally float forward and kick a goal. So he's an option for you.
Can we trust his knees?
I'm not sure. I'll answer it like you answered before, Phil. I did a slider survivor draft today. I picked Darcy Cameron ruck, and with my last pick, I put the big cocks just in case Darcy Cameron goes down. So we made sure that we got some coverage there. So I think he's okay. Yeah. He'll be okay. But yeah, he's not durable, is he?
Cameron was in the very early drafts of my team. When I was really trying to lean into the 3 primo ruck strategy, and I love the ceiling that we've seen from him. The durability question terrifies me.
Yeah, that's a fair call. It's a fair call.
It is.
And again, what do you want from your rucks? Do you want to set and forget, or do you want to be stuffing around? I picked him. Was it 2 years ago? I picked him as he was really unique, and I started him at the start of the year. I think he got 110, 115, 105, and then went down. And so while it was a brilliant pod, it just killed me because I had to trade out. It was painful.
Give us a forward line, Hurls.
Forward line. So forward line, a little bit similar to GWS. They like the smalls. So I've got Schultz down there. I've got Bobby Hill and I've got Elliott as the 3 smalls. Elliott plays a bit taller, but McCreary also on the bench. So they got 3 genuine smalls and Elliott. And then the talls, they got Myercheck, McStay, Membry. And I think that's going to be a really interesting mix for them. McStay's going to do the second ruck work to give Darcy Cameron a chop out, especially while Cox isn't in. And I think Membry looked really good. He fit in really nicely with that forward mix in the practice match, although they did play against Skits Fizz, our friends Richmond, which is it's which is hats, let's be honest.
Yeah.
They're all contenders just in case this week. Just in case we didn't think St Kilda fans had copped enough in terms of the kick in the guts counter, they had to watch Tim Membry absolutely kill it in the black and white. Another former Swan that I think most neutral footy fans would look at Tim Membry and just be really happy for him that he seems to have landed in a really good football situation.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah.
So it's a dangerous forward line. Collingwood have always got this habit of, the saying goes, the Collingwood 6-footer. They never have the big key forward that dominates, but they just get goals out of everyone in their forward line. So that's going to be good to watch. The rain might have a say in this one, though.
Anyone coming off the bench, Hurls, that is of Supercoach interest? Does Ed Allen get a gig?
I've got Ed Allen as sub in my team for this week. I had Hoskin Elliott on the bench, McCreary on the bench, Pendlebury and Markov were my 4 bench with Ed Allen sub. And then I did make a note that obviously Houston's suspended to come in. He'll be a walk-up, and De Goey a walk-up once he's fit. So even if you are thinking Ed Allen, I'd be a little bit cautious, because if I'm thinking bench or sub now, and there's still a couple more to come back, I think he needs some injuries to get a game. He does look a Supercoach ready player if he gets game time, but I don't know we're going to get it.
Yeah, boys, how relevant is, when he is back, how relevant do you think Jordan De Goey is this year?
Not.
From what do you mean, from a Supercoach point of view, or from a
Supercoach point of view? Because Jordan De Goey is that player who I look at every single year and get very close to bringing in and never actually bring in, and then watch him play this outstanding brand of football one week and go absolutely missing for another 3 weeks.
And then shit the bed the next week.
Yeah.
I think
is this the year that we see a little bit more consistency? Because he won't. I don't think he floats forward as much because of the names that you've just mentioned. He's actually not needed to play that high half forward role that he's really, really good at. So as a dedicated mid, does he become more Supercoach relevant?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think he's always going to be an impact player. He's always going to be that sort of one quarter he'll get 10 touches, burst out of the middle, look like the best player in the comp, and then the next quarter he quietens down. I don't think he's Supercoach relevant personally.
No, I don't think so. I think you're right there. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our 4 teams that we're going to discuss tonight. Now, we've got plenty of questions that we need to get through, both in the chat and also through our Patreon. So if you're a Patreon subscriber, you get priority to your questions being answered each week. So we're going to get stuck into them first.
It's question time. Let's answer your questions for the week ahead.
We'll chop and change here. I'll go with you first, Hurls. What does Flynn need to average for him to be worthwhile in the flex spot? Ray is contemplating him for another cheaper rookie and using the dollars elsewhere.
Yeah, if you get 6 straight weeks out of Flynn at 90, is a great pick. But do you get it? I know, like, Deadly's a big no because of the injury history. I'll tell you, I had Flynn in my flex for about half a day this week. Okay. I think it's my second preferred play, but every time I tinker with my team, I have to leave a good mid-priced or rookie midfielder out if I have Flynn in that flex spot, and I want 12 mids, so I'm not going there. But if you are, I think if you get 6 weeks and 90 points, you're going to make cash. It's going to be a good, successful move.
My fear.
Forget 6 weeks. Forget 6 weeks. Can we get 6 minutes? Can we get 6 minutes of a healthy Matt Flynn?
Oh,
I said I wasn't picking Darcy Cameron because I was worried about the guy's fitness. Matt Flynn gets out of bed and goes straight onto the physio table. Doesn't say hello to his kids, doesn't say hello to his missus, rolls out of bed, straight into the physio.
Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it.
It's a no from Phil.
There you have it.
He's a myth.
Matt Flynn is the first. Yep. Phil has just given out his first Cone of the Week nomination.
The best ability is availability. Matt Flynn in the bin.
Oh, unreal.
He was on the radio. He was on the radio here today telling Tim Gossage to pick him in his team because he's ready to go. If that has any weight.
I got 2 things to bring up. One, love it, Phil. So everyone gets another free pack. Thanks to the guys at the GameDay Squad. But also, people got to remember that Oscar Allen didn't play in that game and Bailey Williams played a high percentage forward. So Oscar Allen comes back. They're going to want to get games into Archer Reed. Then there's Bailey Williams. Then there's Matt Flynn. It's a bit of a carousel, Hurls, that I'm not sure I want to take that risk on.
It is. There's risk. Injury risk. There's that he is the number one ruck. We haven't seen it yet. I'd be much more comfortable if they were playing opening round and you could have a look at it. It's the question was, what do we need? We need 90 in 6 weeks. If you think he can't do that, don't pick him. If you think he can do that, go for it.
Yeah. Your one now, Golden Tonsils. Dawson or Petrarca? Who has the better role and the better ceiling?
I think that changed for me a little bit on Sunday. I would have said Dawson through most of the preseason, and now I'm leaning Petrarca.
Hurls?
I don't know that I feel confident enough to go with either of them, though.
Yeah. I picked up Dawson really cheap last year, and he was good for me. But I think there's going to be games like that in him again. I think if I'm going to spend $550K, I want to trust that they're going to be 115 mid, and I don't trust him. I trust Petrarca more, except that I've got the injury risk hanging over his head. I think if Petrarca doesn't get injured, he's safer for me.
Quick one here, Hurls, from Brody. Do we think Liam Baker and Jaden Short can be top 8 in their respective lines?
No. Baker, no. Short, unlikely.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Stepping stones for both of them for me. If you're picking both of them, they're stepping stones, not keepers. And if one of them turns out a keeper, bloody bonus, right?
Yeah. Phil, nice easy one for you, mate. Is Nick Bryan an option?
Next question.
Okay. Flagged ons. Hurls. Cheers for your work, fellas. This is from Happy Chappy. Bit of a toughie, but he has this dilemma each year. Will you stick fat with a player, mainly rookie or mid-pricer, if he has the right role but scores poorly in round 0? Or will you jump off to a player who scores higher but has a worse scoring role? Also, what score does Dacos need to be a must-have?
All right. So I'll go the first part first. Mm-hmm. Always go roll over score. Always. We learnt, or we should have learnt from last year, and we all made the error that we jumped off Hayden Young, we jumped off Nick Martin. They had the roles that we wanted, and we jumped off them because they got a 65 or something, and they were fine to hold all the way through, and they would have saved us 4 trades probably. And the second part of that question was, what was it again?
What score does Dacos need to be a must-have?
For me, he's not a must-have because I think at some stage of the first 6 weeks, you will get an 85 or a 95, and that will be enough to drop his price, and he has the buy. So for me, he's never going to be a must-have. If he gets 140, which is quite possible, even against Bedford, I'm still not going to pick him, but I know a lot will.
For sure. Occy Strap, for you, Phil, you've already answered part of this question. Does Connor Stone keep his role when all the suspended people come back? We've pretty much said no.
I don't think
or would
so.
someone like Boxall from St Kilda be a better pick?
I would go with Boxall. I'm just not convinced that Stone has the disposal efficiency more as much as anything else that would justify him keeping his spot.
Gotcha. From Causa, Hurls, is it okay to go Rankin over Pickles with the round 12 bye for Pickles? So which way would you look to start if you had to pick one between Rankin or Pickles?
If you asked this question 5 weeks ago, I was hot on Rankin over Pickles because I thought Pickles didn't have the ceiling to hurt. I've changed my tune completely seeing him in the 2 practice games, and I think he does have the ceiling to hurt. With Butters out, I think you have to have Horn Francis as your F1.
100%.
I would love to have him, but I can't afford him.
Phil, for you?
I don't like Horn Francis as a footballer, and it makes it really difficult for me to pick him at SuperCoach. He only runs in one direction. He doesn't. I don't like watching him play as someone who wants him to score points because it then agitates me when he does all the stuff that I don't like him for. Having said all of that, he's probably the safer pick over Rankin, who most neutral football fans would really enjoy watching play football. So I hope that answer helped, but I'm aware it probably didn't.
Yeah,
Agree.
all right, another one, Phil. Quick one. Adam Chera or Flynn Callahan? You can only have one.
Callahan.
Hurls?
Chera.
Love the diversity.
I love them both, but I think Chera has proven he can go 108 in the Carlton team.
Mhm.
He's got
And they have a really nice run to start.
ridiculously easy draw. Like he's got 6 weeks of just easy draw. It's crazy.
Yep. Last one. I'll start with you, Hurls. Do you think there will be an increase or decrease in ownership of players in teams still playing opening round games? Curious to know which way coaches will go with the likes of Dacos and Houston.
So I think there's two things that we'll see. There will be an increase in mid prices and rookies from opening round, because if you get a really good score out of someone that you want for cash gen, it makes perfect sense to get that in the bank. I think the other thing we'll see is that teams that were going to play in round 0 that now aren't, namely Brisbane and Geelong, they will have the spike because they'll, once it gets announced that they're playing in round 3 and don't have the early bye, your likes of Zorko, your likes of Neil, your likes of Bailey Smith, your likes of all of them will just go through the roof.
For sure. Now we'll get stuck into the questions here on the pod. And I'm not going to be able to select all of them, sorry, ladies and gentlemen, because there are a shitload in there, and we appreciate you guys tuning in. From Deadly first. No Deadly on the pod. That's a win for all. Couldn't agree more.
Wasn't a question, was it?
No, I just wanted to bring it up.
More a statement of fact.
Yeah. Golden Tonsons. How'd you get that nickname?
Ask your girlfriend.
Oh, shit.
So,
all right,
are we going live?
Yeah, I might have to edit that part out. Our man Pete from Nerds for Life. Good afternoon, boys. You guys now off Nizé Wanganeen-Malera. His impact was greatly affected by the mid-roll. I don't think so. I think Rossi Lyon just wanted to give him a run through the guts.
Yeah, I think he's still a reasonable pick. He's been in and out of my team, but because I've now really want to pick Nick Martin, I can't pick Wanganeen-Miller as well because they're right at the same price point.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. For you, Phil, Tom Hanley from I don't really like cheese. Tom Hanley will debut this week. You heard it here first. I like the confidence.
I think he's done everything he possibly could. I don't think he's debuting this week from everything that I've heard, but he's, he's pushing already. The kid's got talent.
Yeah, awesome. Tiger Spoons, get out your Tiger Spoons. Absolutely. The Bombers, Francis at centre-half back or floating intercept mark guy, like a Tom Stewart role for Geelong. I see this as a massive trap. This would be Aaron Francis he's talking about, Phil.
Yep. Definitely don't pick him for SuperCoach. I think Aaron Francis gets a little bit too much criticism when you think of it. Like he's a workman, journeyman type footballer. I don't necessarily know what certain fan pockets expect from him. He's going to come in and do a job well enough if we get enough injuries, which we've got people missing in our back line, so he's likely to get some game time early on in the season. He's just nothing special, but he gets in there and does a job. Completely irrelevant for SuperCoach.
Yeah, agree. Essendon legend, mind you. Skitsfits, with Stewart playing mostly midfield, does that make Humphreys more juicy or Connor O'Sullivan the intercepting marker? I love that you brought this up, Skitsfits. I'll go first, Hurls, and then you can.
Go for it,
I actually really like the role that Connor O'Sullivan's going to have. He didn't score well against Essendon because he played in the twos beforehand. He played a couple of quarters in the ones. He was already running into a third quarter's worth of legs when everyone was fresh. So he was still getting his hands on the ball. Yeah, he handballed it 8 times, didn't kick it. I'm not worried about that at all. I just like the fact that Scott is going with him down back as an intercepting mark, that third tall. He's athletic. He can run. He's a good size fella. Am I expecting hundreds out of him? No. But if I can get 60s and 70s where in a rookie line in our defense it's really ordinary, then by all means, welcome aboard, mate.
I think he's the one that, or not just the only one, but one of the ones that we would have loved to see this week, right? Mm-hmm. Geelong not playing this week makes it a bit more confusing because you have to pick him without seeing whether he's, you'll see the team's name, but you won't see whether he's got a certain role. I don't trust Chris Scott to be saying, like he said today, that Stewart's going to play in the midfield with Nevitt and with Dangerfield. Like, I don't trust that. I think Stewart will play sometime in the middle for sure, but he'll play mainly down back, and I think mainly Dangerfield will play mainly up forward, and I think Nevitt will be left in the middle with a few other blokes. So I think, it's hard to work Geelong out, and because of that, that's going to make it confusing as to which ones you pick. I'm going more with the rookies from Geelong than I am with the primos for that reason.
I think this is from our conversation before with Barras and Battle being in the side. Is there value in James Sicily from Jamie? I think there's real value there.
Yep, no argument here.
Phil?
Oh, there's definitely value there. I haven't been able to get him in my side just yet, but I couldn't argue against anyone who's prioritised him.
For sure. He has been priced at north of 600K before too. Yep. From 2 Foot, are there any defenders below Perryman and above 119K? Oh, I guess we just answered it, didn't we?
Yep.
Yeah, I think the other, like, Short is a viable option. He's cheaper than Perryman, isn't he? Or is he a bit more? Can't remember.
Short is 30K more expensive.
Oh, he's more. Okay, so below Perryman's hard to find, isn't it then?
Maybe Luke Cleary from the Dogs, but again, we won't get to see that role again.
Joel Fraser or Fraser?
Oh, yeah.
I think round 1 will be good because there'll be no Bailey Dale or Daly Bale, as he's known here. But when Bailey Dale comes back, that's when we're like, well, he's going to be the second or the number 2 when we're talking running out of defence and ball use. So,
yeah.
Bit of love for Hurls. Well said, Hurls. Danny O'Meara. Boo-hoo
bit?
to GWS. What's that?
Danny O'Meara has got 2 profiles. That's the better half. She's got 2 profiles up, has she?
Oh, she's got a burner. There you go. 2 Foot, become a GWS member and get cheap KO and finals tickets easy. Smart man. Jonas, what about Himmelberg up forward? That could work. If they've got Buckley and Taylor down back, he has been known to play forward in the past.
He's probably played more forward than back in his career. Yeah. I've seen nothing, I've heard nothing to suggest that they're even thinking about that.
Yeah, right. Pearls, Global's interested in Miles Bergman. I think it looks like he has the old Houston role. Would love some insights. I'm probably more interested in Logan Evans.
Well, I was just going to say there's 4 guys, actually 5 if you count Sin as well, who I'm reliably informed had really low time on ground, and so points per minute was okay. But you've got Bergman, you've got Sin, you've got Farrell, you've got who did I miss? Finlayson was back there. Evans. So you've got so many back there that they've been trying in those roles. I personally think they'll go with Farrell and Evans. They'll be the 2, I think, and Finlayson be the sort of swing man who goes back occasionally. But I just don't know whether you're going to get chopping and changing through the year, and that's the problem there.
Yeah. Collingwood supporter, 2 Foot. Big Texan will be traded this year, but to whom? I don't know who'd take him.
I think I heard a really good conversation about Tex on one of the it might have been SEN, and they were saying just get rid of him so that they can give space to Thilthorpe and Fogarty. 100%. But how are you going to do that until he retires? I don't know. He'll probably be there till he retires, won't he?
You would think so. So I'm just going through the messages here. Ahmed Prog, our man that was playing basketball tonight, he probably got a triple-double. He's a bloody gun, that man. Pie's age profile suggests unless their kids are top talent, they won't really play. I think he's bang on there.
100%.
Yeah.
They have no inclination whatsoever to experiment. They're all in.
Yeah. Steedsy, hey horse, thanks for the new addiction. GameDay Squad. Yep, jump on board, brother. We're all loving it. Hurls girl. Geez, you even got people name themselves after you. I've got Jay Dacos now. He'll be magic in the role he's been given. Him with Houston is going to be A-OK.
Can I add a word of caution on that? She's very, very renowned for picking the Collingwood boys she loves and not picking people she hates, like Lachie Neale. So just take that with a grain of salt. But Josh Dacos, we already said he is a good pick. But that just have to put a disclaimer out for that one.
Yeah, right. What have we got here? James Lubke. Sorry. Does Leake keep his midfielder's role? Can he stay in the team when the Cosplay 6 come back?
Yeah, that is a fantastic question. I think he has all of the ability to hold a spot, but there are so many players to come back into that team. I am not confident that he does. I am confident, however, that if he loses his spot early in the season, we see him again in the second half of the year.
Okay. There's a name we forgot with that Port Adelaide rotation. That's Ryan Burton.
Yeah, there's so many of them back there, right? Yeah.
I wouldn't be game enough to choose one. No. And against St Kilda last week, who are known for giving up huge points because their zone, they push a lot more defensive than what other teams do. So, yeah. I think that's going to do us for questions tonight, Hurls. Where can the people at home find you?
On Twitter, so at Silvertop Hurls is the main place you'll see me tweeting my opinions. Or if you're a Patreon, you'll get to also hear me ranting and raving in the group chats there. So that might be a reason to join up.
Oh, look, and I mean, after a top 300 finish last year, or top 305 finish, you've got the runs on the board. You know what you're talking about, and the people enjoy talking to you, mate. So thanks for what you do, and looking forward to the season ahead.
Loving it. Can't wait. This is one of the, being only 2 games, it's probably not as much as last year, but round 0 really informed some great picks last year. I think you're crazy if you're not watching the games. And one word of caution that I'll leave everyone with, don't just look at stats, watch the games, because roles matter, not just the stats that come up.
100%. Phil, you're a last-minute addition, mate, but really appreciate you jumping on board. Where can the people find you?
Always a pleasure, Horse. I am very occasionally on X at Phil Unfiltered. And I just want to say it's been a pleasure and a privilege to be sandwiched for the last hour and a half between the big horse and the big kahuna of buy planning. It's been an absolute phenomenal evening with the two of you blokes.
Oh, mate, we love talking footy. And for the people that have been in the Discord last year and the WhatsApp group now, they'll get to enjoy the Golden Tonsils renditions of the voice notes that come out each weekend. So that's something that our Patreons are going to look forward to and just love getting around. So to you two boys, good luck for the year. Thank you for joining me tonight. And fuck me, I just cannot wait for the footy to start. So let's get it on. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Hit like, subscribe, and the bell if you haven't already. Put the thumbs up. We call it being the triple banger. But also, if you're listening to us on audio, the 5-star review gets us out to more like-minded super coaches in Australia, New Zealand, and around the world. We have got Golden Tonsils holding up his Dane Rampy shirt. Jeez, I wish I could burn that. But anyway, next week, we've got some more special guests coming up. On Monday night, we have an ex-AFL player joining us who should have joined us last Monday, but work commitments stopped him. So he's going to be here for our AFL wrap-up of round 0. But then starting round 1, we've got a bit of an international flavour who's going to be joining us. So I want you guys at home to stand by because this guy is a senior footy coach of an international AFL team. So got some really good insights as to what happens abroad. So you're not going to want to miss that. But for tonight, Hurls is on the far right. Sandwiched in between us is Golden Tonsils on the horse, and we'll see you Monday night. Catch you then.